Welcome to my course on ISAC's Certified Information Security Manager, CISM certification. This is one of the hottest certifications in the industry and is excellent for people who want to move to a leadership position in IT security. CISM will give you authority and credibility in the industry as a cybersecurity leader or manager. Today I will cover Domain 4, so let us get started. Before you start, check out my video on domains 1 to 3 if you still need to do so that you will follow the flow and know all the concepts. As I always say, sharing is caring. Why not share this channel or video with others around you? This video is not only for people keen on cybersecurity but for anyone keen to learn more about cybersecurity and protect themselves. Please like and subscribe to my channel, comment if you find it helpful and share. Spread the love around. Domain 4 comprises 30% of the overall CISM information security management areas. It is called incident management and comprises 2 topics mainly, which are: firstly, incident management readiness, and lastly, incident management operations. Incidents are a reality in any environment. No matter how many security controls you implement, an incident will always happen. This is not just restricted to security but will cover business continuity and disaster recovery situations. Without any delay, let's start the trolling, CISM. Our world is full of surprises, including events that disrupt our plans and activities. In the context of IT and business, several unexpected events can cause significant disruption to business operations, even to the point of threatening the ongoing viability of the organization itself. These events include natural disasters, human-made disasters, malicious acts, cyber attacks, and changes with unintended consequences. Incident management readiness begins with upfront analyses of business processes and their dependence upon business assets, including information systems. This analysis includes a big-picture prioritization of business processes and an up-close examination of business processes and information systems. This is followed by developing contingency, response, and restoration plans. A natural byproduct of this effort is improved resilience of business processes and information systems even if disruptive events never occur because overall weaknesses in processes and systems are identified, leading to steps to make tactical improvements. Although security incident response, business continuity planning, BCP, and disaster recovery planning, DRP, are often considered separate disciplines, they share a common objective: the best possible continuity of business operations during and after a disruptive threat event. Therefore, the security incident response plan will cover cybersecurity and business continuity. A ransomware event might occur when an attacker damages or destroys information or systems. An incident of this type may necessarily require security incident response, BCP, and DRP. Security incident response is enacted to discover the techniques used by the attacker to compromise systems so that any vulnerabilities can be remediated, thereby preventing similar attacks in the future. Business continuity response is required to operate critical business processes without primary processing systems. Disaster recovery planning is needed to recover its systems and resume normal operations as quickly as possible. Security incident response, business continuity, and disaster recovery require planning so that the organization will have discussed, documented, and outlined the responses required for various types of incidents in advance of their occurrence. Planning is essential. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, the more you plan, the better you are prepared. Risk assessments are the foundation of planning for all 3 disciplines because organizations must discover relevant risks and establish priorities during a response. Additionally, by taking this proactive approach, the team will have a framework to lean on for incidents that may not have been considered otherwise. Now, we will explore the security incident response overview. A security incident is an event that compromises or may compromise the CI of an information system. It will touch on any of the triad corners. So, what is CIA? Can you still remember? CI refers to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. As a result of a security incident, the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information, or an information system, has been or is in danger of being compromised. A security incident can also be any event representing a violation of an organization's security policy. For instance, if an organization's security policy states that it is not permitted for one person to use another person's computer account, then such use that results in the disclosure of the information would be considered a security incident. Several types of security incidents can occur. Computer account abuse. Examples include willful account abuse, such as sharing user account credentials with other insiders or outsiders, or one person stealing login credentials from another. Computer or network trespass. An unauthorized person accesses a computer network. The methods of trespass include malware, using stolen credentials, access bypass, or gaining physical access to the computer or network and connecting to it directly. Information exposure or theft. Information protected by one or more controls may still be exposed to unauthorized people through a weakness in controls or by deliberate or negligent acts or omissions. For instance, an intruder may be able to intercept email messages, client-server communication, file transfers, login credentials, and network diagnostic information. Or a vulnerability in a system may permit an intruder to compromise the system and obtain information stored or processed there. Malware. A worm or a virus outbreak may occur in an organization's network. The outbreak may disrupt normal business operations simply through the malware's spread, or the malware may also damage infected systems in other ways, including destroying or altering information. Malware can also eavesdrop on communications and send intercepted sensitive information back to its source. Ransomware and wiperware. A malware attack may include ransomware, where critical data is encrypted, and a ransom is demanded in exchange for a decryption key. Variations of ransomware attacks include the exfiltration of critical data with the threat of posting the data publicly and wipers that destroy data instead of encrypting it. Denial of service, DOS, attack. An attacker floods a target computer or network with the volume of traffic that overwhelms the target so that it cannot carry out its regular functions. For example, an attacker might flood an online banking website with so much traffic that the bank's depositors cannot use it. Sending traffic that causes the target to malfunction or cease functioning is another form of a DOS attack. Both types result in the malfunction of the target system. Distributed denial of service, DDoS, attacks. Similar to a DOS attack, a DDoS attack emanates simultaneously from hundreds or thousands of computers that comprise a botnet. A DDoS attack can be brutal because of the volume of incoming messages and many attacking systems. Encryption or destruction of critical information. A ransomware or wiper attack can result in encrypted or destroyed information. Disclosure of sensitive information. Any sensitive information may be disclosed to any unauthorized party. Information system theft. Laptop computers, mobile devices, and other information processing and storage equipment can be stolen, which may directly or indirectly lead to further compromises. If the stolen device contains retrievable sensitive information or the means to access sensitive information stored elsewhere, what started as a theft of a tangible asset may expand to become a compromise of sensitive information. Information system damage. A human intruder or automated malware may cause temporary or irreversible damage to information or an information system. This may result in an interruption in the availability of information and permanent loss of information. Information corruption. A human intruder or automated malware such as a worm or virus may damage information stored on a system. This damage may or may not be readily noticed. Misconfiguration. An error made by an IT worker can result in data loss or system malfunction. Sabotage. A human intruder or automated malware attack may disrupt or damage information systems, or facilities in a single organization, several organizations in a market sector, or an entire nation. With all the security incidents explained, The last for us to know that security incident response overview can be differ by severity as well. As for any emergency, the best time to plan for security incident response is prior to the start of any actual incident. During an incident is a poor time to analyze the situation thoughtfully, conduct research, and work out the sequence of events that should take place to restore normal operations quickly and effectively. Emotions may run high, and there may be a heightened sense of urgency, especially if there has been little or no advanced planning. Effective incident response plans take time to develop. A security manager developing an incident response plan must thoroughly understand the organization's business processes and underlying information systems and discover resource requirements, dependencies, and failure points. A security manager may first develop a high-level incident response plan, which is usually followed by the development of several incident response playbooks, the step-by-step instructions to follow when specific types of security incidents occur. Objectives. Similar to any intentional activity, organizations need to establish their objectives prior to undertaking an effort to develop security incident response plans. Otherwise, whether business needs are being met may need to be clarified. Following are some objectives that may apply to many organizations. First, minimal or no interruption to customer-facing or revenue-producing business operations. Second, no loss of critical information. Third, recovery of lost or damaged information within DRP and BCP recovery targets, mainly Recovery Point Objective, RPO. Fourth, the least possible disclosure to affected parties. Fifth, least possible disclosure to regulators. Lastly, the least possible disclosure to shareholders. Maturity. The organization should consider its current and desired maturity levels when undertaking any effort to develop or improve business processes. As a quick reminder, the levels of maturity according to the Capability Maturity Model Integration for Development, CMMIDEV, are as follows. The first step will be initial. This represents a process that is ad hoc, inconsistent, unmeasured, and unrepeatable. The second step is repeatable. This represents a process that is performed consistently and with the same outcome. It may or may not be well documented. Third will be defined. This represents a well-defined and documented. The last step will be managed. This represents a quantitatively measured process with one or more metrics. Resources. Security incident response requires resources. Security managers should keep this in mind when developing incident response plans. Each stage of incident response, from detection to closure, requires the involvement of personnel with all the sets and various tools that enable personnel to detect an incident, analyze it, contain it, and eradicate it. Various types of incidents require various tools and skills. Personnel is the heart of security incident response. Effective security incident response requires personnel with a variety of skills, including the following. First will be incident detection and analysis. Security Operations Center, SOC, analysts and other personnel use a variety of monitoring tools that alert them when actionable events occur. This personnel receive alerts and proceeds to analyze an incident by drilling into the details. These people may also undertake threat hunting, proactively searching systems and networks for signs of reconnaissance, malicious command and control, CNC, traffic, and intrusion. This function is often outsourced to managed security service providers, MSSPs, that run large 24/7/365 operations, monitoring hundreds or thousands of client organizations' networks. Next, we will discuss network, system, and application subject matter experts, SMEs. With expertise in the network devices, systems, and applications related to alerts, this personnel can help SOC analysts and others better understand the meaning behind incidents and their consequences. Then will be malware analysis and reverse engineering. This personnel use tools to identify and analyze malware to understand better what it does on a system and how it communicates with other systems. This helps the organization to decide how to contain the incident and defend itself against similar attacks in the future. Fourth will be forensics. These persons use tools and techniques to collect evidence that helps the organization better understand the nature of the incident. A chain of custody may protect some evidence in anticipation of later legal proceedings. Next will be incident command and control. These personnel have expertise in overall security incident response and take charge during an incident. Generally, this type of coordination is required only in high-impact incidents involving multiple parties in an organization and external entities such as customers, regulators, and law enforcement. Now we will talk about crisis communications. This personnel are skilled in internal communications and communications with external parties, including regulators, shareholders, customers, and the public. Then will be legal, privacy. One or more people in the organization's legal department will read and interpret applicable laws and make decisions related to external communications with customers, regulators, law enforcement, shareholders, and other parties. Business unit leaders are also department heads. This person will be called to make critical business decisions during an incident. Examples include decisions to take systems offline or transfer work to other processing centers. Executives are the top leaders in the organization who need to be consistently informed and will be called upon to ratify or make crucial decisions. Lastly, law enforcement personnel in external agencies may be able to assist in incident investigation. Optimizing represents a measured process that is under continuous improvement. When we talk about incident response plan development, this is a significant development. Incident response plan development is also known as phase-wise development. It will start with a gap analysis. Before developing a security incident response plan, the security manager must determine the current state of the organization's incident response capabilities and the desired end state, for example, a completed security incident response plan with specific capabilities and characteristics. A gap analysis is the best way for the security manager to understand what capabilities and resources are lacking. Once gaps are known, a strategy for developing security includes response plans that will create or acquire all necessary resources and personnel. Plan development. A security incident response plan is a document that defines policies, roles, responsibilities, and actions to be taken in the event of a security incident. Often, a response plan defines and describes roles, responsibilities, and actions related to detecting a security incident. Considering the high velocity and impact of specific security incidents, this portion of an incident response plan is vital. A security incident response plan typically includes these 6 sections: policy, roles and responsibilities, incident detection capabilities, playbooks, communications, record keeping. We need to be as detailed as possible with the development. Recognizing that there are many types of security incidents, each with its impacts and issues, many organizations develop a collection of incident response playbooks that provide step-by-step instructions for incidents likely to occur. A set of playbooks may include procedures for the following 12 incidents. Number 1, lost or stolen laptop computer. Number 2, lost or stolen mobile device. Number 3, extortion and wire fraud. Number 4, sensitive data exfiltration. Number 5, malware, ransomware, and wipers. Number 6, stolen or compromised user credentials. Number 7, critical vulnerability. Number 8, externally reported vulnerability. Number 9, DOS attack. Number 10, unauthorized access. Number 11, violation of information security-related law, regulation, or contract. Number 12, business email compromise. During a severe incident, emotions can run high, and personnel under stress may not be able to remember all the steps required to handle an incident properly. Playbooks help guide experienced and trained personnel in examining, containing, and recovering from an incident. They are commonplace in other industries. Pilots and astronauts use playbooks to handle various emergencies, For example, they practice the steps to help them prepare to respond effectively when needed. Such development needs to be tested regularly to ensure they are effective. Periodic updates. All security incident management documents must be periodically reviewed by all responsible parties, SMEs, and management to ensure that all agree on the policies, roles and responsibilities, and steps required to detect, contain, and recover from an incident. Generally, organizations should review and update documents at least once yearly, anytime a significant change is made in an organization or its supporting systems. Business Impact Analysis, BIA, studies business processes in an organization to understand their relative criticality, their dependencies upon resources, and how they are affected when interruptions occur. The objective of the BI is to identify the impact that different business disruption scenarios will have on ongoing business operations. The results of the BI drive subsequent activities, namely BCP and DRP. The BI is one of several steps of critical, detailed analysis that must be carried out before developing continuity or recovery plans and procedures. The first step in a BI is identifying critical business processes and supporting IT systems. Within the overall scope of a BCP project, the objective is to establish a detailed list of all identifiable processes and systems. The process usually begins with developing a questionnaire or intake form circulated to key personnel in end-user departments and within IT. When all of the BI information has been collected and charted, a criticality analysis can be performed. Criticality analysis studies each system and process, considering the impact on the organization if incapacitated, the likelihood of incapacitation, and the estimated cost of mitigating the risk or impact. In other words, it's a somewhat special type of risk analysis that focuses on key processes and systems. The criticality analysis should also include a vulnerability analysis, aka vulnerability assessment, an examination of a process or system to identify vulnerabilities that, if exploited, could incapacitate or harm the process or system. Determine maximum tolerable downtime. The next step for each critical process is the establishment of a maximum tolerable downtime, MTD, aka acceptable interruption window, IW. This theoretical period is measured from the onset of a disaster, at which point the organization's survival is at risk. Establishing MTD for each critical process is an important step that aids in the establishment of key recovery targets. Determine maximum tolerable outage. Next, the maximum tolerable outage, MTO, metric must be determined. MTO measures the maximum time an organization can tolerate operating in recovery, or alternate processing, mode. This metric comes into play when systems and processes in recovery mode operate at a lower level of throughput, consistency, quality, and integrity or higher cost. MTO drives the need to re-establish normal production operations within a specific period. We will explore more on how to establish recovery targets. Recovery point objective. Generally, the RPO equates to the maximum period between backups or data replication intervals. It is generally measured in minutes or hours, and like RTO, shorter RPO targets are typically associated with higher costs. The value of a system's RPO is usually a direct backup or replication frequency or replication. For example, if an application server is backed up once per day, the RPO will be at least 24 hours, or 1 day, whichever way you would like to express it. Maybe it will take 3 days to rebuild the server, but once data is restored from the backup tape, no more than the last 24 hours of transactions are lost. In this case, the RTO is 3 days, and the RPO is 1 day. Recovery time objective. The RTO establishes a measurable interval during which the necessary activities for recovering or resuming business operations must occur. Various business processes in an organization will have different RTO targets, and some business processes will have RTOs that vary according to business cycles on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis. For instance, Point-of-sale terminals may have a short RTO during peak business hours, a longer RTO during less busy hours, and a longer RTO when the business is closed. Similarly, financial and payroll systems will have shorter RTOs during critical processing times, such as payroll cycles and financials at the end of the month. RTOs, data classification, and asset classification are all interrelated. Business processes with shorter RTOs will likely have data and assets classified as more operationally critical. Now, we will focus on the business continuity plan. BCP reduces risks related to the onset of disasters and other disruptive events. BCP activities identify risks and mitigate those risks through changes or enhancements in business processes or technology so that the impact of disasters is reduced and the time to recovery is lessened. The primary objective of BCP is to improve the chances that the organization will survive a disaster without incurring costly or even fatal damage to its most critical activities. Business continuity planning is closely related to disaster recovery planning. Both are concerned with the recovery of business operations after a disaster. DRP is undertaken to reduce risks related to the onset of disasters and other events. It is mainly an IT function to ensure that key IT systems are available to support critical business processes. DRP is closely related to, but somewhat separate from, BCP. The groundwork for DRP begins in BCP activities such as the business impact analysis, criticality analysis, establishment of recovery objectives, and testing. The outputs from these activities are the key inputs to DRP. Types of disasters. BCP professionals broadly classify disasters as natural or human-made, although the origin of a disaster does not figure very much into how we respond to it. Let's take a look at a few. Natural disasters. Natural disasters occur in the natural world with little or no human assistance. They result from the natural processes in, on, and above the earth. Here are examples of natural disasters. Earthquakes. Sudden movements of the earth with the capacity to damage buildings, houses, roads, bridges, and dams, precipitate landslides and avalanches, and induce flooding and other secondary events. Floods. Standing or moving water spills out of its banks, flows into and through buildings, and causes significant damage to roads, buildings, and utilities. Flooding can result from locally heavy rains, heavy snowmelt, a dam or levee break, tropical cyclone storm surge, or an avalanche or landslide that displaces lake or river water. So far, we have shared BCP development and DRP plan development. If you need clarification, revisit the prior videos to understand the concepts. We need to know that such development is not a one-time activity. BCP has a life cycle and is a professional step for us to follow. I will share the life cycle shortly. Another thing we need to know is that cybersecurity is a top-down approach. Therefore, it needs to be owned by management. When top management is involved, we will need a proper follow-up to ensure the resources spent are accounted for. Therefore, a core team needs to be formed. Just like anything else, we need to consider and take note that human life is always the top priority. Safety is the key. We will share about the BCP process life cycle. The following are the steps of the BCP process life cycle. Step 1. Assign ownership of the program. Step 2 is, develop a BCP policy. Step 3 is, conduct a business impact analysis. Step 4, perform criticality analysis. Step 5, establish recovery targets. Step 6, define KRIs and KPIs. Step 7, develop recovery and continuity strategies and plans. Step 8, test recovery and continuity plans and procedures. Step 9, test integration of business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Step 10, train personnel. Step 11, maintain strategies, plans, and procedures through periodic reviews and updates. A formal BCP effort must, Like any strategic activity, flow from the existence of a formal policy and be included in the overall governance model. Now we will talk about backup and recovery. This is very important and helpful in your daily work. Backup and recovery. Many types of events can damage information, and some circumstances compel an organization to revert to earlier versions of information. Copies of stored information must exist elsewhere and in a form that enables IT personnel to load this information easily into systems so that processing can resume as quickly as possible. Backup to tape and other media. In organizations still utilizing their own IT infrastructure, tape backup is just about as ubiquitous as power cords. From a disaster recovery perspective, however, the issue probably is not whether the organization has tape backup but whether its current backup capabilities are adequate in the context of disaster recovery. There are times when an organization's backup capability may need to be upgraded. If the current backup system is challenging to manage. If whole system restoration takes too long. If the system lacks flexibility concerning disaster recovery, for instance, a high level of difficulty would be required to recover information onto a different type of system. If the technology needs to be updated or updated. If confidence in the backup technology is low. Many organizations may consider tape backup as a means for restoring files or databases when errors have occurred, and they may have confidence in their backup system for that purpose. However, the organization may have somewhat less confidence in its backup system and its ability to recover all of its critical systems accurately and in a timely manner. While tape has been the default backup medium since the 1960s, using hard drives and solid-state drives, SSDs, as backup media is growing in popularity, hard disk transfer rates are far higher, and SSDs higher still, and disks/SSD are random access media, whereas tape is a sequential access medium. A virtual tape library, VTL, data storage technology sets up a disk-based storage system with the appearance of tape storage, permitting existing backup software to continue to back data up to tape, which is really just more disk storage. E-vaulting is another viable option for system backup. E-vaulting permits organizations to back up their systems and data to an off-site location, a storage system in another data center or a third-party service provider. This accomplishes two important objectives: reliable backup and off-site storage of backup data. Note: backups have always been a critical activity in IT. Ransomware has served to highlight its importance still further. Backup schemes. Three main schemes are used for backing up data. Full backup. A complete copy of a dataset. Incremental backup. A copy of all data that has changed since the last full or incremental backup. Differential backup. A copy of all data that has changed since the last full backup. The precise nature of the data to be backed up will determine which combination of backup schemes is appropriate for the organization. Some of the considerations for choosing an overall scheme include the following: criticality of the dataset, size of the dataset, frequency of change of the dataset, performance requirements and the impact of backup jobs, recovery requirements. An organization creating a backup scheme usually starts with the most common scheme, a full backup once per week and an incremental or differential backup every day. However, as stated previously, various factors will influence the design of the final backup scheme. Here are some examples. A small data set could be backed up more than once a week, while an especially large data set may be backed up less often. A more rapid recovery requirement may induce the organization to perform differential backups instead of incremental backups. If a full backup takes a long time to complete, it should probably be performed during times of lower demand or system utilization. Site recovery options. In a worst-case disaster scenario, the site where information systems reside is partially or wholly destroyed. In most cases, the organization cannot afford to wait for the damaged or destroyed facility to be restored because this could take weeks or months. If an organization can take that long to recover an application, you'd have to wonder whether it is needed. The assumption must be that the organization will recover critical applications at another location in a disaster scenario. This other location is called a recovery site. There are two dimensions to choosing a recovery site: the speed at which the application will be recovered at the recovery site and the location of the recovery site itself. Hot sites. A hot site is an alternate processing center where backup systems are already running and in some near readiness to assume production workload. The systems at a hot site most likely have the application software and database management software already loaded and running, perhaps even at the same patch levels as the systems in the primary processing center. A hot site is the best choice for systems whose RTO targets range from 0 to several hours, perhaps as long as 24 hours. Warm sites. A warm site is an alternate processing center where recovery systems are present but at a lower state of readiness than recovery systems at a hot site. For example, while the same operating system version may be running on the warm site system, it may be a few patch levels behind primary systems. The same could be said about the versions and patch levels of DBMSs, if used, and application software. Cold sites. A cold site is an alternate processing center where the degree of readiness for recovery systems is low. At the least, a cold site is nothing more than an empty rack or allocated space on a computer room floor. It's just an address in someone's data center or co-location site where computers can be set up and used at some future date. Often, cold sites contain little or no equipment. When a disaster or other highly disruptive event occurs in which the outage is expected to exceed 7 to 14 days, the organization will order computers from a manufacturer or perhaps have computers shipped from some other business location to arrive at the cold site soon after the disaster event has begun. The personnel would travel to the site, set up the computers, operating systems, databases, network equipment, and so on, and get applications running within several days. Mobile site. A mobile site is a portable recovery center that can be delivered to almost any location worldwide. A viable alternative to a fixed location recovery site, a mobile site can be transported by semi-trailer truck and may even have its generator, communications, and cooling capabilities. APC and SunGard provide mobile sites installed in semis. Oracle can provide mobile sites that include a configurable selection of servers and workstations, all housed in shipping containers that can be shipped by truck, rail, ship, or air to any location in the world. Cloud sites. Organizations are increasingly using cloud hosting services as their recovery sites. Such sites charge for utilizing servers and devices in virtual environments. Hence, capital cost for recovery sites is negligible, and operational costs come into play as recovery sites are used. As organizations become accustomed to building recovery sites in the cloud, they are, with increasing frequency, moving their primary processing sites to the cloud as well. Reciprocal sites. A reciprocal recovery site is a data center that a separate company operates. Two or more organizations with similar processing needs will draw up a legal contract that obligates one or more of the organizations to temporarily house another party's systems in the event of a disaster. Often, a reciprocal agreement pledges not only floor space in a data center but also the use of the reciprocal partner's computer system. This type of arrangement is less common but is used by organizations that use mainframe computers and other high-cost systems. Security incidents cannot be prevented, at least not all of them. In this asymmetric cyber war, attackers have innovation, time, and the element of surprise on their side. It is imperative that every organization using IT develop formal security incident response plans, train their personnel, and continually practice with walkthroughs, drills, and simulations. Now we explore the incident response phases. Planning. This step involves developing written response plans, guidelines, and procedures to be followed when an incident occurs. These procedures are created after the organization's practices, processes, and technologies are well understood. This helps to ensure that incident response procedures align with security policy, business operations, the technologies in use, and practices regarding organizational architecture, development, management, and operations. The plans, guidelines, and procedures should identify and include key external partners. The planning cannot be conducted in a vacuum because many organizations rely on partners for key business functions. Detection represents the moment in which an organization is initially aware that a security incident is taking place or has taken place. Because a variety of events can characterize a security incident, an organization can become aware of an incident in several ways, including the following: application or network slowdown or malfunction, alerts from intrusion detection system, IDS, intrusion prevention system, IPS, data loss prevention, DLP, system, web content filter, cloud access security broker, CISB, extended detection and response, XDR, antivirus, firewalls, other detective and preventive security systems. Alerts from a security information and event management, SIEM, system. Media outlets and their investigators and reports. Notification from an employee or business partner. Anonymous tips. Notification from a regulator. Notification from a media outlet. Initiation. This is the phase in which response to the incident begins. Typically, it includes a declaration of an incident, followed by notifications sent to response team members so that response operations may begin. Depending upon the severity of the incident, notifications may be sent to business executives. Analysis. In this phase, response team members collect and analyze available data to understand the incident's cause, scope, and impact. This may involve using forensic analysis tools to understand the activities on individual systems. During this phase, partners or vendors may be engaged to collect information from their systems to determine the extent of the compromise. Containment. Incident responders perform more direct actions that halt or contain the progress or advancement of an incident. The steps required to contain an incident will vary according to the means used by the attacker. Techniques include blocking command and control traffic or taking storage systems offline. Senior leadership is usually involved in approving the containment actions of the team. In some cases, a mature incident response program will already have rules of engagement, so the technical teams know which actions are approved and which need input from senior leadership. Eradication. In this phase of incident response, responders take steps to remove the source of the incident. This could involve removing malware or physically removing an intruder. Recovery. When the incident has been evaluated and eradicated, it is often necessary to recover systems or components to their pre-incident state. This can include restoring data or configurations or replacing damaged or stolen equipment. Remediation. This activity involves any necessary changes that will reduce or eliminate the possibility of a similar incident occurring in the future. This may take the form of process or technology changes. Closure. Closure occurs when eradication, recovery, and remediation have been completed. Incident response operations are officially closed. Post-incident review. Shortly after the incident closes, incident responders and other personnel meet to discuss the incident, its cause, impact, and the organization's response. Discussion can range from lessons learned to possible improvements in technologies and processes to improve defense and response further. Now, we will talk about incident management tools. We will talk about incident response roles and responsibilities. A security incident response plan contains information about specific roles and responsibilities to ensure that a security incident is handled correctly and promptly. Typical defined roles and responsibilities include the following. Reporting security problems. Many organizations enact policies that require all personnel to report suspicious issues to security personnel. Incident detection. This may occur via dedicated security event monitoring personnel, in a security operations center, or SOC, or by people with other responsibilities. In the former case, Personnel will periodically examine event logs or be sent messages when security events occur. Also, help desk or service desk personnel must be trained to recognize security incidents while working with end users and troubleshooting problems. Incident declaration. Some personnel are granted roles that can formally declare a security incident. They are usually trained to recognize various incidents and follow procedures to notify others. Incident declaration formally triggers the performance of incident response procedures and communications. Incident commander. Some personnel coordinate various activities as an incident unfolds and is managed. For this role, organizations typically select domain experts and other personnel with technical skills and backgrounds who can direct other personnel as an incident is examined, contained, and resolved. In severe and prolonged incidents, incident commanders will take shifts. Internal communications. These roles are designated to communicate information about an incident to personnel inside the organization to keep other internal parties informed on the proceedings of the incident and its response. External communications. This personnel are authorized to communicate with outside parties, including law enforcement, regulators, customers, partners, suppliers, shareholders, and the public. Typically, external communications are shared with one or more people who must approve any external communications and those who do the actual communicating. Legal counsel. Inside or outside counselors are generally responsible for interpreting applicable laws, regulations, and legal agreements. They advise other incident response personnel of steps that should, or should not, be taken. In many cases, incident investigations are protected by attorney-client privilege, which requires that legal counsel be involved in the main proceedings of the incident. Scribe. One or more scribes maintain records of all the proceedings. This includes but is not limited to actions taken by all incident response personnel, decisions, communications, and the location of records such as retained logs and artifacts from forensic analysis. Forensic analysis. Many security events require one or more people with expertise in computer and/or network forensics who seek to determine the cause of an incident and methods that can be used to contain and eradicate it. Because some security incidents may result in subsequent legal proceedings, forensic analysts employ evidence preservation techniques and establish a chain of custody to ensure evidence is not altered. Containment, eradication, remediation, and recovery. This personnel halt an incident's progress and recovers affected systems to their pre-incident states. While containment, eradication, remediation, and recovery are four distinct steps in incident response, they are often performed by the same personnel. Business continuity and emergency operations. A significant incident may result in considerable downtime or other business disruption, as one or more critical systems may be affected by an incident and taken out of service. An organization may need to invoke business continuity and/or emergency operations to continue critical business operations. Next, we will explore incident response tools and techniques. The detection of most security incidents, including malware and intrusions, requires the use of tools. Without these tools, organizations may be unaware of any incident in progress and may not learn of the incident until months or years later, if ever. Some tools are used to examine and analyze an incident that has been identified. They help security personnel understand events in one or more systems and/or networks. Other tools are sometimes used to eradicate and recover from an incident. Finally, tools can be used to chronicle all the events of an incident for later analysis during post-incident review and beyond. Incident response tools include the following. Logging. Events on individual systems and network devices often provide direct or indirect indications of intrusions and other incidents. Logs stored in a central server make this capability more powerful, as events from different systems and devices can appear together, providing a more comprehensive view of events. Log analysis and correlation. A SIEM provides log analysis and correlation to help security personnel realize when unwanted events are occurring or have occurred in the past. Alerting. A SIEM or other log processing system can be configured to produce alerts when specific incidents occur, proactively notifying security personnel that something requires attention. Threat hunting. Specialized tools are available to facilitate proactive threat hunting. Threat intelligence. Many organizations subscribe to one or more cyber threat intelligence feeds that help make personnel aware of actionable threats, enabling them to confirm that protective and detective measures are in place. Some threat intel feeds are meant to be fed directly into a SIEM, which will correlate threats with identified vulnerabilities to direct personnel to improve defenses. Other threats intel feeds are intended to be human-readable. This functionality is often packaged in a threat intelligence platform, TIP. Malware prevention. Antivirus and advanced anti-malware solutions on mobile devices, laptops, and servers detect the presence of malware and can often block or disrupt its activities. Firewalls, IPSs, web filters, and spam, phishing filters can also provide malware detection and prevention capabilities. Network intrusion prevention. IPSs analyze the details and contents of network traffic that passes through them, detecting and often blocking an initial intrusion or the command and control (CNC) traffic generated by malware that has successfully compromised the system. A typical IPS is configured to block specific traffic automatically and produce alerts when this occurs, but it will permit specific traffic. Network intrusion detection will alert personnel of suspected attacks without doing anything to stop them. Web content filter. Many organizations employ systems that protect from the hazards of users browsing malicious and fraudulent websites. Web content filters can block access to known malicious sites and sites associated with various types of inappropriate content. For example, an organization can block users from accessing sites that focus on pornography, weapons, hate crimes, or online gambling. Some web content filters can examine the contents of traffic and can block malware from reaching end-user devices. File integrity monitoring, FIM. FIM systems periodically scan file systems on servers and workstations and report any changes. Although changes may result from periodic maintenance, they can also be indicators of compromise. A typical FIM system alerts a SIEM to notify SOC analysts of a potential intrusion. File activity monitoring, FAM. FAM systems monitor directories and files on servers or workstations to detect unusual activities that may indicate compromise. A typical FAM system sends alerts to a SIEM, where SOC analysts will watch for alerts. Forensic analysis. These tools are used to study the events on a system, examine the contents of file systems and memory, and analyze malware to understand its structure and actions. Their use requires forensic skills and experience. They usually don't reveal what happened but instead show detailed information to a forensic examiner, who determines which elements to examine to uncover the relevant chain of events. Forensic analysis is used to examine a malware attack and chronicle the events of an employee accused of misbehavior. Video surveillance. This is needed for incidents involving human activity, usually the comings and goings of personnel, intruders, and any items they carry. Record keeping. Decision steps are undertaken, and communications need to be recorded so that incident responders can understand the activities that have taken place during incident response and provide a backward look during post-incident review. Cyber insurance companies and incident response. Although organizations have been able to purchase cyber insurance policies for decades, it is only in the last few years that cyber insurance companies have become intimately involved in organizations' security practices and incident response. This involvement has deepened following a plague of ransomware attacks and large insurance payouts in recent years. As a result, cyber insurance companies are doing the following: becoming keenly aware of the specific risk factors leading to costly incidents. Thoroughly vet organizations' security programs and capabilities, using lengthy questionnaires and requests for specific artifacts such as security policies and detailed configuration information. Creating policies with more detailed terms, conditions, and exclusions. charging organizations higher premiums with limitations and benefits if an organization is deemed to have substandard security practices and safeguards in place, or denying them coverage at any price. Becoming deeply involved in security incident response, sometimes by directing one of a short list of security professional services firms to perform computer and network forensics. Obtaining cyber insurance is becoming increasingly difficult as insurance companies are becoming more stringent on requirements such as multi-factor authentication and anti-malware. An organization must be aware of the fine print of its cybersecurity policy, otherwise, the organization may find the policy worthless when it's time to file a claim. Now, we will explore more managed security service providers, MSSP. This is a prevalent concept nowadays. A large number of organizations have centralized logging, CISM, vulnerability scanning, and other capabilities, but these are not large enough to warrant staffing a Security Operations Center, SOC, 24/7/365. To ensure full coverage, including coverage for sick days, vacations, holidays, and training, a minimum of 12 personnel may be required to staff a SOC, not counting the SOC manager, software licenses and the equipment and space required. For this reason, many organizations outsource the monitoring of their SIEMs and related activities to a managed security services provider, MSSP, aka MSS. Modern MSSP's capabilities include the following: Managed SIEM, Managed Vulnerability Scanning, Managed Data Loss Prevention, Managed Endpoint Security Monitoring, Managed Detection and Response, MDR, Security Incident Response and Forensics. MSSPs monitor events and incidents in dozens or hundreds of customer organizations and have a large staff to ensure full coverage at peak workloads. Because qualified security personnel can be difficult to attract and retain, many organizations are turning to MSSPs to offload routine tasks and free themselves of the burden of staffing and running a SOC. Organizations that outsource parts of their security operations to an MSSP need to be mindful of several considerations, including the following: Operational partnership. An MSSP typically performs a monitoring function but, in most cases, does not take remedial action. Therefore, when the MSSP identifies an actionable incident, it hands off the incident to someone in the customer organization to take the necessary action. Service level agreements. An MSSP typically publishes a schedule of SLAs so that customers understand how responsive the MSSP will be in various scenarios. Organizations should regularly test their MSSP to verify that events are being monitored and comply with the SLAs for alerting in response to events. Another key concept will be incident detection. The detection phase marks the start of an organization's awareness of a security incident. In many cases, some time elapses between the beginning of an actual incident and the moment that the organization is aware of it. This period is known as dwell time. The ability to detect an intrusion or incident requires event visibility, typically achieved through event log collection and analysis tools, usually a SIEM system, and other tools that monitor and detect activities in networks, servers, and endpoints. An organization can be made aware of an incident in several ways, including but not limited to the following: Reporting by an employee. An organization's personnel can be aware of certain incidents, especially misbehavior by other employees. Reporting by an MSSP or SOC analyst. Personnel monitoring the organization's networks and systems will likely detect suspicious activities and initiate an investigation and response. Reporting by a customer or client. An organization's customers or clients may have noticed phenomena related to a breach and may report it to the organization. Social media. Clients, customers, and other parties may report observations about a security incident via social media, particularly if they have no other means of notifying the organization. Notification from law enforcement or regulator. In the case of information theft, outside organizations and agencies may become aware through higher fraud rates. Law enforcement investigations reveal the source of the intrusion. Notification from a security researcher. Security researchers sometimes discover vulnerabilities or signs of intrusion in other organizations' networks. Unknown persons. Occasionally, someone not associated with the organization will notify the organization of a security problem. For example, a passerby may notice discarded assets tossed aside by someone who stole them. IT personnel or end users. A security incident may initially appear as a malfunctioning or error in a system or application. Only through analysis is the malfunction determined to be caused by an intruder. For this reason, IT service desk personnel need to be trained to detect security issues when users call for help. After detection, we will follow by analyzing it. In the security incident response analysis phase, response team members evaluate and rank available information to reveal the nature and criticality of the incident. This phase may include the use of forensic examination techniques that permit the examiner to determine how an incident was able to occur. Incident ranking and rating. The types and severities of security incidents vary significantly. A relatively minor incident, such as the loss of a laptop computer with encrypted contents, would be considered far less serious than the theft and exploitation of a large database containing sensitive customer information, for example. Accordingly, an organization's incident response plans should include steps to determine the scope and severity of an incident. This will help the organization determine the amount and types of resources that may be required and determine whether executive management is informed of an incident. Forensic investigations. After a security incident, the organization may determine that an investigation is needed to determine the cause and effects. A forensic investigator gathers, studies, and retains information that may be needed in a court of law should the incident result in legal proceedings. Because the information collected in an investigation may later be used in legal proceeding, a forensic investigator must understand the requirements regarding the chain of custody and other evidence protection activities that ensure that evidence can be used in court. Chain of custody. The key to an effective and successful forensic investigation is establishing a good chain of custody. A chain of custody documents, in precise detail, how and when evidence is protected against tampering through every step of the investigation. Any irregularities in the information acquisition and analysis process will likely be looked at unfavorably in legal proceedings, possibly resulting in the organization failing to convince judicial authorities that the event occurred as described. After analyzing all these, you will be able to determine the gaps and how badly the organization is in shape. From this step, you will be able to know how to approach and improve the whole posture. A breach of privacy is a unique type of security incident. In a privacy breach, an attacker may steal or compromise sensitive or private data about employees, customers, or other persons. The steps taken during incident response will be the same as those for breaches of other types of information. Privacy is guided by law, and there are unique incidents that are out of the norm, and we need to know how to handle them. One thing to note is that, although in terms of cybersecurity, you are already secure, you might not have met the privacy controls accordingly to the law, especially when it comes to GDPR. Lastly, we must ensure that data is kept as per requirements. Incident handlers must handle privacy data according to the organization's security and privacy policies. The organization may be required to notify affected people immediately after the incident. Organizations that store or process information within the scope of privacy laws should include a security incident categorization that covers privacy incidents. Security incident plans or playbooks should include specific information that directs incident responders to perform all necessary steps, including notifications and disclosures. Outsourcing is key in organizations, so we need to understand incidents involving service providers. With many organizations outsourcing one or more principal business applications to external service providers, organizations need to develop plans that include the procedure to follow when an incident or breach occurs in a service provider's environment. An organization that provides software as a service, CIS, will likely detect an incident, such as a malware attack or an intrusion when it occurs. The legal agreement between the organization and the CIS provider should stipulate the circumstances in which the CIS provider will notify affected customers. For the most part, the CIS provider will perform most or all phases of security incident response, but that does not mean that the customer organization has nothing to do. A breach in a CIS organization is still a breach, and the customer organization must have an incident response plan that considers such circumstances. When there is a breach, the organization will not have access to all the data for investigation. And this can be a serious consideration for the company. And when members' or customers' data is key to your business, organizations will have to rely mainly on the CIS provider's incident response to proceed and close the incident. However, the customer organization will need to be informed along the way, as it will need to pursue damage control, including notification of affected parties. Organizations are fully accountable when a breach occurs in a service provider's organization. The organization selected the service provider and is accountable for all outcomes, including breaches. Incident containment includes the steps taken to prevent the incident from spreading further. First, we must stop the incident from spreading. Containment requires knowledge of the particulars of the incident and is most successful after the incident is examined and its techniques are identified in the assessment phase. Containment is distinct from eradication, which is the removal of threats or threat actors from the environment. The threat still exists when containment has been completed, but it cannot proceed further because containment measures have been taken. Then, we need to isolate the affected system from the network. Many cyberattacks can be contained by curtailing their network communications. If the attacker's communication connections have been severed to prevent establishing or resuming communications, often the attack can be considered to be contained. Based upon the nature of the intrusion, containment may involve network changes in a firewall, IPS, or edge router to black hole communications from the attacker's network. Indeed, one of the main functions of an IPS is to block communications with known domains, and IP address ranges known to be malicious. But for an attack originating from a malicious network not yet identified by an IPS, the organization can quickly implement a rule to block the IP address, range, or entire country's range of IP networks, as appropriate. Lastly, we need both processes together with tools to work together. Many forms of malware, including ransomware, utilize C&C communications from the computer they have attacked to servers controlled by the malware operator. While managed IPS systems block C&C traffic from known adversaries, recognize new, unclassified commands, and proactively block traffic. However, security incident responders also realize that some forms of malware are not completely incapacitated when their C&C traffic is disrupted. They still may be able to operate independently and may even continue to explore an organization's network and even infect additional systems. This is another reason why isolating affected systems is so important. Similarly, if the malware's C&C is DNS-based, incident responders may be able to block C&C traffic effectively by preventing DNS lookups to the domains identified as malicious. When an attack has been identified, and once the organization has collected available information about the attack can be effectively contained by severing most or all network communications from the target system. This may, however, also impair incident responders from carrying out subsequent eradication and restoration steps if they cannot communicate with the system. Other techniques are available in the containment phase. For instance, if the attacker can compromise systems through privilege escalation, locking the affected user or system account may prevent the attacker from successfully compromising additional systems. Also, if ransomware actively encrypts files on a network share, blocks authentication on the network share, or removes the network share altogether, removing affected systems from the network effectively contains the attack. Security incident response, in its details, needs to be more straightforward. While timely communication with specific parties is essential, organizations must not over-communicate the details of an incident. Sometimes, the organization should limit communications about the existence of an incident only to authorized parties rather than the entire organization. The incident response team should also consider using out-of-band communications if normal communications channels are suspected to be compromised. For instance, if the team believes that corporate email and/or instant messaging is compromised, an entirely different system should be used for communication until the incident has been closed. Crisis management and communications. Many organizations employ crisis management and/or crisis communications personnel and procedures. Both exist to improve responses to various business emergencies, including business interruptions. These capabilities should be incorporated into security incident response plans if they exist. An organization uses the crisis management process to respond to various business emergencies. One could liken crisis management to a general mobilization plan for business leaders and others to respond quickly and effectively to disruptive events. Given that disasters and security incidents fall into disruptive events, a security incident response plan, business continuity plan, and disaster recovery plan should utilize the capabilities in crisis management. Why would an organization develop a similar, parallel capability instead of using what it already has? Crisis management does not exist to take over or control business continuity, disaster recovery, or security incident response. Instead, crisis management can provide templates and techniques for communications and escalation. Crisis management should help simplify the overall effort of responding to all business emergencies. Crisis communication is a subset of the overall public relations function used to inform internal and external parties of the proceedings of business emergencies. A crisis communications person or team often prepares for a variety of business emergencies through pre-written press releases and prepared remarks that can be tailored for each event. Crisis communications often establish relationships with internal and external parties such as investor relations, public safety, and news media. Policy related to crisis management and communications should define the personnel authorized to communicate with external parties. But even then, an organization's top executives may often be required to approve individual external communications. Attorney-client privilege. Some organizations utilize their legal counsel as a central point of communication during a security incident. When done properly, this may permit an organization to shield communications and other proceedings from discovery in case of a lawsuit. This practice is known as attorney-client privilege. Consult with legal counsel to understand the applicability and procedures for this approach. We will also need to involve PR and legal to ensure correct messaging. Communications in the incident response plan. Communications procedures, including identifying the specific parties involved in incident communications, should be sufficiently detailed so that incident responders will know precisely whom to inform, what to say, and not say, and how often to communicate. Personnel doing the communicating and receiving communication need to understand the serious and sensitive nature of incident communications and limit communications to the fewest possible personnel. Limiting communications to few authorized persons. A few security incidents should be discussed organization-wide. Instead, communications about an incident should involve the fewest possible numbers of personnel. Each of those persons needs to understand explicitly any obligations regarding the need to keep the lid on news and details about a security incident. Moving on will be law enforcement proceedings. Organizations sometimes involve local, regional, or national law enforcement when an incident occurs. Law enforcement organizations can be outstanding business partners in these situations, sometimes making cyber incident experts available to help the organization understand what happened. It is a good practice to determine the key points of contact for various agencies with which your organization is most likely to interact during an incident. This helps ensure that lines of communication are already established, which can shorten the time for an agency to engage with the organization. Often, A law enforcement organization will request that the organization refrain from publicly disclosing details about the incident, sometimes requiring that the organization say nothing to the public. This is understandable, particularly if the law enforcement agency attempts to identify the perpetrators in the incident to apprehend and charge them with a crime. In these cases, organizations must keep detailed records so that all incident response team members know what information is known about the incident, what has been communicated with law enforcement, and what has been communicated publicly. We need to take note of record keeping. Typical incident response plans often direct that all proceedings of incident response be recorded so that post-incident activities can be informed by the steps taken during the incident. This record-keeping should include emails, notifications, decisions, artifacts, reports, and virtually everything connected with the incident. A standard, consistent methodology for recording incidents facilitates future research by making specific types of information easier to find. For instance, if MITRE, ATT and CK is used to analyze malware, a folder called MITRE containing this information could be created for each incident. Organizations must identify a secure, reliable data storage system for storing information about each incident. Access should be granted to the fewest numbers of personnel possible, as some of this information is highly sensitive and could help future attackers by revealing the organization's architecture and defenses. The chosen repository should support the chain of custody or a separate storage technique used when a chain of custody is needed. Organizations that utilize ticketing systems often prefer to record the proceedings of a security incident in the ticketing system. Although this may be a favored solution, many ticketing systems' contents are viewable by numerous personnel. If a ticketing system is used, it should have a way of marking tickets containing incident information as private or restricted so that only the fewest number of authorized personnel can view notes and artifacts. When access to those tickets cannot be restricted or controlled, a different repository should be selected. In addition to developing repositories to contain details about each incident, organizations also need to produce and maintain an incident log, which serves as a master index that contains all security incidents that have occurred in the past. The log may be a simple worksheet or database containing information such as the following: incident number, incident date, incident name, short description, incident context and severity, URL or another pointer to the repository containing incident details. Access to the incident logs should be restricted to few personnel on a need-to-know basis. We will take a look at the incident response matrix. We need to understand how to track if the incident response program is working correctly. An organization's security incident response program can be managed and improved only to the extent that key metrics are established to measure the program's performance. Metrics that can be developed and reported include the following: the incidence of each incident severity and type, dwell time, time from the start of the incident to the time the organization became aware of the incident, time required to contain the incident, time required to resolve and close each incident, the number of times incident response SLAs still needed to be met. Improvements were identified and implemented based on tabletop exercises and lessons learned from actual incidents. Number or percentage of employees receiving security awareness training, as well as any correlation between this and the number of incidents. The number of records compromised. The number of external people affected and notified. And finally, we need to know the total cost and effort required to resolve each incident. Then we can rationalize we should proceed not. Finally, we'll be reporting. Like any management report, the information security manager must identify target audiences and tailor reporting for those audiences based on the types of information of interest to them. Reports may include metrics, key risk indicators, KRIs, and key performance indicators, KPIs, that help management better understand whether the incident response program is effective at detecting and responding to incidents. For instance, Security incident reporting for a board of directors may contain a list of significant incidents and metrics showing the incident's trends over time. This reporting should inform the audience of basic facts, including whether the number of incidents is increasing or decreasing over time, whether the effort and cost of incident response increase or decrease over time, whether any significant incidents have occurred, including any requiring regulator or public disclosure. What measures are planned to improve detection and response? Security leaders need to be able to explain trends to senior executives. For instance, an increase in the number of security incidents does not necessarily mean that defenses are deteriorating. Instead, the number of attacks may increase, or the ability to detect attacks is improving. Incident eradication is another key you will need to know. Eradication is the complete removal of the agents that caused harm in an incident. To remove threat agents successfully, the security incident response team must be confident in earlier containment steps. Depending on the nature of the incident, this may involve the removal of physical subjects from a work center or information processing center or the removal of malware from one or more affected systems. Modern malware and intrusion techniques can be difficult to identify and even more difficult to remove. Incident eradication depends on how successful the containment can work out. Malware can have characteristics or employ techniques that make it more resilient, including the following: hiding within legitimate processes, fileless malware, and forensics techniques include encryption, steganography, file wiping, and trail obfuscation. Hiding data in memory, slack space, bad blocks, hidden partitions, or the registry. Hiding below the operating system in the master boot record, in a virtual machine hypervisor, or the system's basic input-output system, BIOS, or a Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, UEFI. The personnel who examine infected systems must have up-to-date skills and experience to identify and remove malware and other attack artifacts. All these must be documented. The recovery phase of security incident response focuses on restoring affected systems and assets to their pre-incident state. Recovery is performed after eradication is completed. This means that any malware or other tools used by the intruder have been removed. The state of a system entering the recovery phase is described as free of all tools, files, and agents used by the intruder. There are two basic approaches to recovery. Restoration of damaged files. In this approach, incident responders have a high degree of certainty that all artifacts used by the intruder have been removed from the system. While this is a valid approach, it does come with some risk, as it may be challenging to determine positively that all components used by the intruder are removed. We also need to think about it when we encounter damaged files. What should we do? And are these files acceptable for the organization to be removed? Or is there any contract liability towards the organization when the data and the files are damaged? Bare metal restores. This approach removes all information from the system and recovers from backup. Typically, this involves reformatting the main storage. Incident responders must be aware of advanced techniques attackers use, including persistence in the computer's BIOS, UEFI, or hidden main storage partitions. Further, if the systems being restored are virtual machines, personnel must determine that new virtual machine images are free of infection. In some situations, a single operation, such as bare metal restoration, may function as both eradication and recovery. However, incident responders should prefer something other than such a measure to save time. Instead, eradication and recovery measures should be chosen based on their effectiveness. Malware cannot be permitted to persist in any circumstance. Post-incident review practices will be the last we want to talk about. After the affected systems and devices have been eradicated from their attack artifacts and recovered to normal use, incident response moves into a post-incident phase. Incident responders and other key security and IT personnel will close the active portion of incident response and begin discussions that hopefully lead to the generation of ideas to improve defenses and response. After an incident has been identified, its causes eradicated, and any affected systems remediated and recovered, the incident can be closed. Mainly this is a back-to-business as usual declaration. Some activities are necessary for full closure. Archival of forensic evidence. All information and records obtained through forensic analysis must be archived. The chain of custody must continue, however, should any legal proceedings occur in the future. Archival of communications records. Copies of internal communications and notifications sent to outside parties must be preserved. Notification to internal personnel and outside authorities. All personnel and outside authorities who have been notified of the incident need to be informed that the incident has been closed. Report issuance. Formal reports are produced for internal and external audiences that describe the incident and all of the steps of detection, response, eradication, remediation, and recovery. The preceding information should be packaged and stored in a protected system with strict access controls. These technical details require protection because they could be used to exploit the organization. Finally, we need to do a post-incident review. When all incident response proceedings have concluded, the organization should consider reviewing the incident that has taken place. A post-incident review should include a frank, open discussion that identifies what went well during the incident response and what could have been handled or performed better. A typical post-incident review should cover the following. Incident awareness. Determine whether the organization realized quickly enough that an incident was occurring. Internal communications. Determine whether internal communications were well organized, the right personnel were involved, and the right information was shared with the appropriate parties. External communications. Determine whether external communications were well organized, including communications with regulators, law enforcement, customers, insurance companies, and the public. Response procedures. Determine whether incident response personnel acted quickly, decisively, and correctly. Knowledge and training. Determine whether incident responders had sufficient experience to perform their tasks effectively. Resilience. The organization examines its environment, including technology and business processes, to discover opportunities to improve its resilience. This can help the organization better defend itself by reducing incident probability and impact. Security organizations should always operate with the culture of continuous improvement. In this regard, reviewing every aspect of a recent security incident should seek to identify improvements that will enable the organization to be better prepared when another incident occurs. Some organizations bring in an expert third party to facilitate post-incident review to minimize emotional response from incident response team members. A third-party facilitator can help the organization avoid any tendency to identify scapegoats and to focus instead on the response itself and potential improvements to detective, preventive, and responsive controls and procedures. We have now finished our session and coverage of all 4 domains. Are you confident and ready to go for the exam and get certified to be a CISM? Please do like and share these lessons with all around you. Not just for cybersecurity professionals but for anyone keen to grow their knowledge in cybersecurity and understand how to protect themselves. Remember, Domain 4 comprises 30% of the overall CISM information security management areas. Stay focused and clam and you will be there soon. Go back and watch the previous lessons if you need a quick revision, and leave a comment if it helped. Domain 1 focuses on information security governance. Domain 2 will be on information security risk management. Domain 3 will covers information security program, and the last domain will talk about incident management. If you like this video, then please do like and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell to follow on the latest video.